think it's such a great way to engage people as well. I think because it's just not seeing, but how they like a little bit of more immersive and truly diving into something and learning about it than just, and I think it's also, I think experiences like these also open up new audiences. What do you say?
Absolutely. It's more personal.
I wanted to ask you, all these years of being a gallerist and you said you didn't come from a wealthy place. You also started in London when you really just recently had moved and you literally had nobody, like, that you felt like, okay, you had a client base to start on with, etc. Welcome to the podcast, Kristin. I'm so happy to have you back again.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Exciting again, always to speak to you, to work with you, and I'm so excited that we're also working together on our next issue, which we'll talk about. But how have you been?
Well, I've been extremely busy. We talked last summer, didn't we? And since then, we opened the Palm Beach Gallery, the West Palm Beach Gallery, which is really, really exciting. Plus, that we are starting the demolition of our London Bridge Gallery now in April, which means we have moved into a new space on Tanner Street. And the London Bridge space so Tanner Street is right across from White Cube Gallery in Bermondsey, for those who don't know where exactly that is. And then the London Bridge Gallery will now will be built, and we will have a new space there in 2 years. I hope it will be finished. So that's also extremely exciting. And I get to, kind of design it and make decisions for how it's going to look like.
Wonderful. That's always a fun part, isn't it? But you have so many exciting things happening, moving from one place to another.
To make it perfect. Yes. Always. It's not a day without something happening.
Okay. Now, Kristen, we've already recorded once, and unfortunately, we couldn't retain or get the video and the audio. So we're recording again. A lot of people, the conversation we've had, they won't unfortunately have access to it. So we decided to do this again. Before we get into it, how about you introduce yourself and who you are, what you do for people who just joining us and maybe are not familiar with the work that you do?
Great. So my name is Kristin Hjellegjerde. I'm originally Norwegian from the fjords. If anybody knows where Geirangerfjorden is, so a very small place where you had to take a ferry to get to. And I actually studied literature, criminology, and ideas of history at the university, so completely different things. And went through with theater and performance art and even real estate in New York before I studied art business. And I know I'm a good salesperson, but I didn't want to sell anything I don't care about. So when I came to London, because my husband is an architect who works for Norman Foster, I decided that I was already 39 years old. So I decided that I'm going to open my own gallery because I just couldn't start working for someone else. It would take too long time to build myself up. So here I go. Didn't know anyone in London, really, except some parents. Nothing. No clients. So I opened the gallery in Wandsworth, and everybody said, "Good luck down there. You're never going to survive," right? But here we are. So we still have our Wandsworth gallery, which is kind of just 7 minutes away from me here. Which I opened close to my kids' school because I knew I was going to work 24 hours and to be handy. And hence, I'm also today sitting in my son's room. Then over the years, we opened the London Bridge Gallery that is now being rebuilt, and then we opened in Berlin. We've been having 4 summers in Norway with exhibitions and a museum show at the Vestfossen Museum of African Art. So I travel a lot in Africa to do that museum show, which took about multiple years. And then we have also opened, we love this kind of like, unique spaces, and curation and unique spaces is inspiring. So we also have a rundown castle in Germany outside of Berlin, which we are doing the next summer show. This summer is going to be the Arc, which is I'm commissioning all the artists to make work in relation to what they want to treasure for the future. It could be their own interpretation, and then we like sort of putting it in this castle that is, so that's its own boat. Last year we had all the artists do art. It was, the show was called "Where the Wild Roses Grow" of Nick Cave's song, which I love, and then I made all the other artists make a work inspired by music that changed their life, and it was just, we had our own soundtrack. It was amazing. And then yes. And then over the years, I've been traveling to Palm Beach for 14 years or so, because my husband was working on the museum as a project architect. And so we got to know quite a lot of people there, and hence why it was the most natural choice for me to open in West Palm Beach. I got offered this space that was a rundown storage unit, but now there's going to be a private museum at the end of it. There's other galleries in the building, and I was like the sort of the first one, except the museum, to sign up for this. And the whole thing that's happening in West Palm Beach now is like they're really making it a cultural um, sort of center with it's close to the Norton Museum. They want to make an arts club. There's a lot of younger people moving there, and they're making new parks, restaurants. It's just like every time I go there, just with a month in between, there is a new change. And so we open our space in October, and my space is like a cathedral. I love it so much, and I got it to design the space with the help of my husband, and he helped out with the rest of the building. So they were quite lenient with the how to create my space. Because I'm not wealthy, so I had an angel over my head on that one, and I still got to design. And I was like, can I please have cathedral high ceiling windows? And then they did put it in, and I didn't think about the hurricane proofing with steel beams. True, I can't even imagine. But the space looks so phenomenal, and the owners are so happy about how it turned out as well. And I built it in a way that you have a solo show in the front, and then you have the storage in the middle, and then you have solo spaces in the back. So I can have some maybe more established artists in the front, and then I can bring up my other artists as well, or new people to the program. So it's all a win-win for everybody.
Right. This is so exciting. So many things from one gallery. I remember our last conversation. Also, coincidentally, our two cover artists from the magazine cover artist come from the same gallery. Like they're part of your roster, which is Ritika and Rebecca both. And now that we are doing, you're guest curating with us the top 100 emerging artists of 2024, which is extremely exciting. I think it's been so well received and so well loved that I'm really looking forward to how that turns out. But tell me something. Yes, I we can't wait. Yes.
Yeah. Can't wait to see what people are sending in. Oh, and by the way, Rebecca and I and her Parisian gallery, Sebon, Lara Sebon, we are doing an incredible show for Rebecca in the Bastille Center in Paris in April, which is in combination with dancers and performances. So it's a 2 week program. Yeah. So if you look at her Instagram right now, a lot of the paintings that she has created in relation to inspiration by the artist is going to happen. It's a kind of like a alternative to doing fairs, doing more of these kind of experimental exhibitions instead. Yeah. Hmm.
Engaged. Yeah. And I think it's such a great way to engage people as well. I think because it's just not seeing, but how they like a little bit of more immersive and truly diving into something and learning about it than just, and I think it's also, I think experiences like these also open up new audiences. What do you say?
Absolutely. It's more personal.
Yeah. Tell me something. All these years, sorry, go ahead. You were saying something. I wanted to ask you, all these years of being a gallerist and you said you didn't come from a wealthy place. You also started in London when you really just recently had moved and you literally had nobody, like, that you felt like, okay, you had a client base to start on with, etc. How has these years been for you? What has been the hardest part for you as a gallerist? We keep asking this question to artists. I want to ask you this question.
Uh, I tell you, like, I couldn't pay myself for the first 6 years, or like I started like £500 a month and so on. Uh, and I think like the first few years, I was like, no, exactly. I remember when I started the gallery, I was so naive, and I was basically under the table. Uh, um, my worst nightmare was some guys that pretended they bought a bit of card and an American Express, and then they withdrew the money, and I was like on the floor crying because and my husband said, "You can't do that in front of your people who work for you." I'm like, "Yeah, but I can't be anything but real." And then and he was like, "I can't believe you didn't know that you have to be rich or have funding to run a gallery." So yes, it's not easy, but I just didn't feel like I had any other fallback. That's just what I wanted to do. So I mean, if you have a backup plan, isn't you're not going to make it happen. You know, it has to be because you.
Yeah. But what was the hardest part for you? And now that you're not managing one gallery, not in one country, you're managing many galleries across the world. That's pretty commendable of the progress in, of what you've built from where you started. But I'm sure it's everybody looks on the front and looks at how glossy it looks, but the picture on the back is pretty different and could be, nothing comes easy.
Well, you kind of have to be. You have to be on the sales all the time because I'm gonna have to cover costs on all the spaces. And I'm still like, I mean, although my team is getting better and better at selling, I'm still doing 70 to 80% of the sales for all the spaces. So it's quite a lot of pressure on me, which we are working on uh, dividing a little bit more, and everybody's getting better, and we're really talking a lot about how to delegate. And also what becomes a little bit better is that when you have a waiting list for artists are very successful, that makes it also a little easier. Yeah, it's at least easier to place and know where to place it and so on. I think like the latest years, the biggest problem has been shipping cost because it's gone up so much. And then, also because of the Brexit and all these extra limitations that are being put on us all the time. I mean, for example, the credit check, it's all fine to credit check people, but we have to go through classes and write up protocols and this and that. I think my team is on it like 1 to 2 days a week. There's so much work and it costs so much money to do. And I think that having to credit check everyone who buys for £8,000 is a bit of a low threshold and should be higher, or the government should have their own little green card. Like you can register with the government and get your permit to collect and be approved instead of putting it on the galleries, as we are not lawyers. And it's like horrifying to be worried about doing something wrong all the time, when we only trying to do good. So I think these things that are taking a lot of attention away. I don't think they understand how hard it is to sell art. It's not like we just like getting money thrown at us. I'm like, I don't think I don't think I have never had anyone spending illegal money at the gallery. I'm sure that there was a lot of that before. I think now you cannot take that risk anyway because your account will be closed. So you have to be really careful. But all the pressure is being put on us. I'm thinking when we were only two people in my team, how could we have done all this due diligence, you know?
How long was that ago?
So we 8 years ago we were still only two.
And how many are you now?
Yeah. So now we are 9 plus me in London, and then we are 3 in Berlin and 2 in the US.
Amazing. How does it feel to
Yeah. All really lovely people. Everybody stays on.
how has your journey been from being a single solopreneur? Let's also compare those years because it's very interesting. When we start off, it's just one person and you're doing anything and everything, and it's just you and the world that you're creating. And then slowly and steadily, it becomes so much more than you. The people that you join, the artists you're working with, the team that you work with, they become such an important part. How has that transition been for you, and what you've learned via having this?
Well, I think that at the core of the gallery is the kind of family spirit. My artist is it gets really close to me. I I know if most personal things that's happening in everybody's life, and also my team is also family. We really are there, all of us, for each other. Uh, so I think like having that at the core is the most beautiful thing, and it's what you like really feel like you are like everybody wants to help each other and help building each other up. So that's my favorite part of everything, and you know, I do appreciate that I don't have to do all the practical things. Shipping, for example, I am completely out of because that's a lot of work, especially paperwork these days. Before we just shipped it with the DHL or FedEx, so right out of it. But now it's just all these different things that you have to add on. So yeah, I think that I have I get to inspire. I get inspired, and the pleasure of having all these spaces is that I can keep my artists busy, so they don't have a gap in their creative um, spirit. And and also, I mean, I would help, and sometimes they have shows with other galleries and so on, but it is kind of like a safe spot to be to be together about a lot of our goals and missions. Also, like for example, with Sohela Sokinavari, that is the first artist that I started working with. She's only having museum shows right now, and if there would have been multiple galleries involved, it would be nearly impossible to loan back 28 artworks for each show and so on, because they all come from different collectors. So all of these things is quite practical to be like very close and working very close together. We have all the research. We know who not to sell to and who to sell to, because we are trying to protect our artists, not to so they don't get it to be on, so the auction market is not on before they're ready for it, for example.
How do you select in from the early years to now? Do you think your process of finding what kind of artists you want to work with has changed, and what does that look like?
Well, I think like my perspective has grown. I mean, after looking at art for so many years and doing research and so on, I think that I'm still working from the instincts, though. Like I see something that hits me, and I never know what it's going to be. I just love the surprises. Uh, mm, yeah, so it can be anywhere from Instagram to references to art fairs to yeah, like for example the one I'm going to an artist studio tomorrow, and it was recommended by I had dinner with a friend of mine who's a writer, and she's like, look at that, and I was like, wow, that looks amazing. So jumped on it right away, and I'm going to her studio tomorrow. So let's see, if that's a winner. And yeah, so all these kind of, I think it comes from all over. I do keep looking online all the time, and I am, basically creating all the shows myself. So I have to feel it. Hmm.
How do you find artists that you feel like, okay, this I've been asking a lot to everybody now. Where do you find your new artists from?
Well, I think that curators are very important, for example, in a museum setting. And then at the gallery, you kind of have to do your own creation because it is kind of a relationship between me and the artist. And if the artist has specific wishes, then we try our best to accompany and create those wishes to come true. So you don't need like a middleman there, unless you are unless you're going to bring in a lot of new artists in a group show or something. That I've done that before. And for example, for the arc, with usually like last year we had 35 artists with 50 works. I kind of run around like like in a um, playground.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, an outline.
Placing work is so much fun to see how it's going to work out together. And I like to not have a plan, like, except with the really large pieces that needs to go a specific space or something like that. Yeah, but otherwise it's just a fun thing, because you will be surprised at how some work can really work together that you didn't think, and play a story. Yeah, so that's that's a joy. A lot of times, though, because I'm now having, we have over 42 shows a year plus art fairs. It's quite a lot. So, it's not always that I can be there. So then we do Zoom installations and so on.
What did you think yourself of being in the arts? Were you someone who was in the early years? Were you interested in being an artist ever, or thought yourself to be?
No, I thought I was going to be a writer, but I have no self-discipline to be by myself so much. So yeah, no, and I'm kind of very much from the countryside where we didn't have much more than elk and sunshine. I do remember my dad, he worked with furnitures and built a company, small company, to a very big company for a while. And they also did something, furniture fair, like in Cologne or in Copenhagen. And so it's kind of actually very similar to the art fair. And when he did the furniture fair, he would take the local painter with him, the artwork from him, and put it on the wall in in the booth, to help out the most famous local little town artist. Nygård was his name, I remember. And so he did have that kind of little bit of an, when I look back at it, as an influence. And also he did produce furnitures that there's a chair called Extreme that is quite famous now, that he nobody would produce in that days. Is quite specific. I'll show you a picture of it later. And yeah, and everybody said, "Oh, who's going to do that?" And Padre Hjellegjerde, who will do that? And and then now the share is in the National Museum, and so and I'm thinking has some sort of similarities with that. I give the artist a platform and a stage to build and grow on, and that's kind of what he did for all the kind of designers as well. Uh, but uh, but yeah, no. So art was like, I remember coming to Oslo and seeing the Astro Fernley collection with on some Kiefer bookshop, the High Priestess, which has which like kind of brought art and books together for me, because I was always reading all the time. That was my So and this bookshop had all these books, kind of like, in sort of steel, and yeah, it's kind of hardcore but beautiful, and that kind of brought the two things together for me. And I've been always, so since I was like 18, 19, everywhere I went, I would go and see exhibitions and museum shows, and and so on. But I didn't know that I was sort of allowed to be in that world. And I think a lot of people think art can be very intimidating, and you know, so
I remember talking about this in the last recording. I'm going to ask a follow-up question. Go ahead.
yes, so so then from all that, when I was doing real estate, then it kind of dawned on me that I'm going and see all the shows. Why not see where I can fit in?
Tell me something. You just shared about, coming. I remember speaking about this with you in the last episode which didn't come out, which was, like you said, artwork feels intimidating. Does not mean that, even if you're an artist, art collector, what's strange is even if you're an artist, you feel intimidated if you don't come from, let's say, an art school, etc., etc. If you're an art collector, you're always thinking if I'm legit enough to buy something, to be an art collector. And similarly, being a gallerist or being on the other side of this ecosystem where you're facilitating this transaction, it does on the top level, it does feel like a lot aristocratic, and for the selected. I remember you said that we shared a very similar idea that I also grew up in a smaller town, you also grew up in a smaller town. We didn't have, and I also had this question within myself, should I be doing this, am I worthy, or is this the right place for me? Sometimes you question yourself, and I remember you also sharing the same uh, thoughts. Can you talk a little bit about your experience, because a lot of times this story is often not shared, a story where the galleries or someone on the uh, you know uh, a role which is often put on a pedestal, on how you've navigated from not coming from the field, then being able to build this whole beautiful business that supports so many artists, and a lot of your artists are doing such incredible work.
Yes. So I think that everyone I met, I just pulled on every red string I could to make them be supportive to the gallery. Making friendship with the collectors and with journalists and with the artists. And I don't know, every day just sitting there writing emails or inviting or, yeah, until until it grows. We just like we I think all my team now is also very good at collecting. Like I said as a joke to a woman the other day, it's like, oh, I haven't been able to come. I said, well, as soon as you come into my sphere, you don't get away. And she was like, oh, a little bit surprised, I guess, about the honesty, but it is true. You just um, but I think that because I have to work so much, maybe harder than people that have the money and the funding, my art is selling and they can live from the work because I have to sell. So I work so hard on making those commitments. And like one of my artists says, one of her studio colleagues was asking, "What do you do with all the work after the show is finished?" And he's like, "I'm not getting any work back. I all sold." So I think like that is what I can offer, because we have to sell to make the money go around. So we sit up and we make that happen until we hit the target each month to cover costs.
And how in the beginning, when now you are a seasoned gallerist entrepreneur, now you know your ways, but how did you feel about it when you were just starting out, also didn't have enough support system, let's say you were just by yourself or you had somebody, and not coming from an art, you just didn't have an experience. How did this world of collecting, have you before that, did you collect yourself so that you knew, okay, how did you navigate from not knowing anyone to being able to build one of the, I think, art selling art is one of the most difficult things. It's not easy. And as the ticket goes higher, I think, and the whole, how social media has changed, and it's so many things now. How was that for you? How did you do that?
I think that every challenge that's coming, we we kind of tried to look at it from a different perspective. I think maybe it's an advantage that I didn't work for another gallery, so I kind of knew what you're supposed to do. So, for example, when COVID hit, we kept putting up installing every exhibition like normal. We just did exactly the program as it was, and then we had some and installed and took pictures, and yeah, like yeah, we did, and it was okay to use the space as a shipping facility, which we ended up being. So it kind of worked, getting things in and out, and hiding in the back, and keep the work going. So I think like we just have to find different solutions. Like I think the art world is very vulnerable. If there is an economical crisis, we are the first ones to be hit because these are luxury goods, you know. So, like for example, now with the war in October, it's been very hard in Europe for the arts. I think we can all see that. It's starting to lighten up a little bit again because people uh, tend to move on after a while, even though tragedies are still happening. Um, and the same thing with the Ukrainian war. It was also like a bit of a down. A lot of European money is going to different causes, right? Uh, so I think you just have to be prepared for challenges at all the time, and that's why it's so good to have to create a real loyalty with your collectors, because if they're going to buy, they will probably maybe collect from your gallery, you know. So it's building that trust between the different people we have. um, is kind of what I've been trying to do the whole time since the beginning.
Absolutely.
uh, so 80% of the collectors will buy again, and yeah, yeah, come again. And then, you know,
I was about to ask, what do you feel has, with the rise of social media now being, you know, it's also opened up and diversified the whole ecosystem so much and democratized both. How do you see this changing? And just in general for the art world as well, how do you think this change has brought?
I think it's good. I mean, some certain I can I'm really not fond of cancel culture because I think none of us are perfect and we all can say the wrong things. So in that respect, I think social media can be horribly destructive. But in regards to seeing what's out there and knowing what's going on, it's beautiful. Like I I use social media all the time for Instagram with the images of artwork and sharing and growing.
You know what's strange? For the past month, I've been speaking to so many gallerists. We've been recording a lot of podcasts, and I keep asking this question to everybody just to see that, what is the general consensus and where people are going, where they're spending the time. And I have this love and hate relationship with social media. I love the opportunities it does provide, but I also feel like specifically as an artist, I feel like it also just sometimes it asks too much of me to go where I want to go, let's say. But as a business owner, I feel like it's such an incredible tool. So I have two ways about it. But I was asking this to a lot of people, including you, and 99.9% people said that they would just scroll on Instagram, and if they like somebody, they just save that. And a lot of the work that the first glance, so they've seen about an artist, has been through Instagram.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's very powerful. I also discover artists from there. Mm. Yeah, yeah.
Which is extremely through Instagram. You do. What does a process? Well, I want to understand what goes behind the scenes. Let's say if you're starting to work with an artist, what does that? And I'll ask you a few more questions which are again focus on emerging artists. I think the biggest problem is we do not have enough galleries, and we have a lot more artists, and there's such incredibly talented artists who are sitting in different parts of the world and may not be in the limelight or are getting the attention probably they deserve. So let's figure that out. What is the first thing that um, strikes you to see a potential in supporting an artist's work? Let's say if you see them online, offline, whatever way. What is the first few thoughts?
It's very difficult to describe because it's just I just see something that I've not seen before, and that's what makes my heart tick in a way. Yeah. So I can't describe it because I don't think any artist can make something to be discovered. They have to make something that is truly theirs. If it's truly from the artist, like not because they're trying to be in one direction that is in right now or they see out there, but if they truly go to their heart and their sources, that's where magic happens. And that's what I also try to let my artists have that time to find that place, you know? Like, since we take care of most of other things, the artist can focus on being in the studio and you know, create magic. I only just interfere with asking what the subject's going to be for this show, or so they know that they're on some sort of direction. And if they have that 6 months before, I think I feel pretty safe that they are on track with making a great show. So I think,
And what next? Let's say you've liked somebody's work and you feel it speaks to you. Then what if next few things that come to your mind? What does that process look like? How do you explore this relationship and turn it into something?
well, I can be very impulsive, so I can be maybe a little bit more dramatically fast than other people. Like Nengi Omukus, she says she has this funny story that when she heard about my museum show in Norway, Kubatana, she was like, "Oh, you know, I want to know Kristin." So she followed me. This is when I didn't have that many followers. This is like 6 years ago or something. So and so she would click like on follow me and then click like on lots of multiple things on my my side. So in 5 minutes, I had seen her work, and I was like, "Oh, do you want to do a group show?" So it's like, you know, so if something hits me, like I know I can feel it is good. Yes, I do. So then I go for it, which can to some people be a little bit like, oh, who is she? What is going on here? Because not many people will react like that, you know. Then and that I think I've had very great success with that actually, like being so, you know, following those kind of feelings and not questioning them. And yeah, now like all her work, most of her work also goes to museums and you know the greatest collectors. And we just had this incredible sold out show in Palm Beach now. It's beautiful. So it's I think it's really fun. I love that process of being there for an artist from the beginning and up because it it
Yes, and you also see them.
yeah, it's just that we create like a bond for for a long, long time that is strong and to know each other. And, you know, some galleries, they don't want to really represent artists or just don't want to deal with that personal part and so on. For me, that's the whole reason why I'm here, kind of, you know, like, like the,
Getting you like to get in and do like, really get your hands messy and truly dive into it.
yes, I want to know the people that I have around. I want to have that kind of trust around me. And that's why, like, some of the artists calls me La Mama, you know. So, or mom, or all kinds of different versions of that. But yeah, because, and that's what I want to be. Like, I think that being the gallerist, you should be mothering, you know, you should give that kind of safe place for them to be, to grow and dare to do experiments. And sometimes the experiments doesn't work. And then I will have to be the one to say that it doesn't work and that can hurt. But then they know that I really mean it when something is really good. So it's that's that's part of that's part of my job, is to make sure that, yeah, make sure that they know that this is work that they want to bring out there, you know.
What is your tip for artists who are looking uh, to expand their careers, to take the next step, to get, let's say, to find the light? I think collaborators, gallerists, agents, consultants, collectors, someone who's, let's say, not able to, they feel like stuck in a loop. I think a lot of time, I think there comes a point where you figure out that you're still learning and you're able to find. And then a lot of artists I see are stuck in a loop where they know who they are, the kind of work, but just don't know now what to do with that, now where to take it, how to take it forward.
Yes. Well, the most important thing is to keep showing, and maybe one can do group shows oneself that one can organize with other artists that they care about and they want to grow with. Um, I think keep working, and I know it's so hard to get the right path in. Um, and some people do it early and some people do it much later, but just keep working. Like, I mean, think about Filida Barlow, she was teaching for all those years before she got her break, and she kept on doing it, and nobody will remember her, nobody will forget her work now, right? So I think, like, your journey doesn't have to be the same as the journey of your other artist friend or so on, like, maybe your journey is going to be bigger. Sometimes, new work takes a long time to be appreciated. uh
And also sometimes you just have to keep believing and keep making the work. I think irrespective of where it's going, when it's going to go, you just have to hear your heart, and if it keeps calling you and you keep, I think that process shouldn't stop.
yes, I believe that if you really work on what you're doing, and you are doing something that's from your core and not something, as I've mentioned before, not taken from some other places, then it's going to happen somehow, you know not give up.
Thank you so much, Kristen. One last question, which is extremely important because we've been getting that. You're curating the top 100 emerging women artists 2024 volume with us. And we've received a lot of submissions, but a lot of times people want to hear from the curator on what kind of work are you interested? What catches your eye? What will you look at? Do you have, can you, anyone who's interested and who's listening to this episode, what do you want to tell them? What are these, how are we going to figure out these top 100?
Well, I think that a strong narrative is very important to me. That you have that the artwork comes from a story, that you are telling something. It could be from where you're from or from whatever you have to say. It's like writing a book. If you don't have a story, it's not it's not going to be particularly good. So I think that if you just make work without thinking about why you're making it, I mean, absolutely, some of the work, like abstract work, sometimes is much more subconscious, but it's still because it comes from some sort of core part of you. So I think, just, what is it that why is it important to you to make that work? And that's kind of what I feel like I can, see, uh, and feel.
That's what calls you.
Yeah, that's what calls me. And it can be in any form. It could be photography, it could be painting, it could be sculpture, it can be any form. But
Thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you so much for having you again. Always, always. And I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you soon again.
thank you. Lovely speaking to you. Thank you. Bye.
You don't have to go.